Okay, hello everybody. This is Here Comes the Spider-Cast number 18, covering November 1981, our first episode of 2020. I'm your co-host Mike L, and as always I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be looking at Spider-Man comics from November of 1981.
That's right, including, actually comprised of, Amazing Spider-Man 222, Marvel Team-Up 111, and Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 60. So we're going to start with Amazing Spider-Man number 222, which thankfully has a guest slot appearance, a writing appearance by Bill Mantlo.
It's a great present for the new year, let me tell you.
Yes, exactly. Bill Mantlo, we've come across him before. He was the former regular writer of Spectacular, and he actually replaces Roger Stern when he leaves. So he has, there's plenty of Bill Mantlo Spider-Man stories to go around. Mm-hmm. And the guest art is by Bob Hall, who did a few. He was never like a superstar, but he did some of the issues of Squadron Supreme. He kind of floated around Marvel for like the 70s and 80s, and then he ended up going to Valiant Comics and doing Shadow Man. And if anyone's interested, I've interviewed him. Yeah, I've interviewed him. He's really nice. I interviewed him at the Michigan Comic-Con in 2018, so I'll attach that link in here somewhere. But anyway.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, for sure. So this is definitely a change of pace from the usual Denny O'Neil stories, right?
Yeah, it's really kind of fresh. Peter Parker feels like Peter Parker again. We get a really kind of fun villain that has a little bit more depth than normal, and Spider-Man has to kind of problem solve to figure out how to defeat him rather than it ending in a big fist fight like usual.
Right.
So it was a nice switch up for sure.
And it doesn't feel like Bill Mantlo is just like filling time. It feels like he actually had a plan going in, right? Like, yeah. So basically we have this character, pardon me, called the Speed Demon, who I've seen before, but I didn't realize this is actually the Wizard.
The Wizard.
Yeah. This is, so to make a long story short, there was a Golden Age character called the Wizard. He was kind of an imitation of the Flash, right? So this is Marvel's version of the Flash. Then in the 60s, Marvel introduced the Squadron Sinister, who were an evil homage to the Justice League.
Right.
Then they introduced the Squadron Supreme, who were an alternate Earth good version of the Justice League.
Right.
And so now this is the evil Wizard who's changed his name to the Speed Demon.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him that he's changed his name.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit better than the Wizard.
What an unfortunate name, the Wizard.
At least it's better than the Pisser, right?
I guess so. I mean, he even has like a giant yellow arrow on his forehead that's pointing down.
That's a good point.
That it's such an unfortunate name. So
Innocent Times, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good rebranding for this dude.
Right. So one thing that's kind of cool about him, one of his defining characteristics is that he's really arrogant. Like, so basically the story starts off with him robbing kind of like a jewelry store, and then Spider-Man tries to stop him, but he can't. But then once Spider-Man kind of like loses the battle, he's running away and he says, yeah, I've got my sights set on robbing the biggest department store in town in broad daylight. And Spider-Man says, and you're telling me? And he says, well, why not? I know there's no way you can stop me. So it's kind of cool, right? It just makes him a little bit different from the usual run-of-the-mill villain.
Yeah, and I mean, he's cocky and he wins too. Like that's the good thing about it, I think, is that like they gave him a little bit of a reason to be so cocky, as nobody's been able to defeat him yet. And even Spider-Man seems to be no match. So Peter Parker really has to kind of think about what he's going to do and plan this this victory out ahead of time to kind of defeat this guy. And it was fun. There's a lot of like corny, cheesy writing in it with some of the stuff he does, but I think it works. Like I didn't hate it.
No, like again, like when I was reading, if I would have read this when I was a kid, I would have loved it.
Yeah,
this is exactly what I was looking for at that age. Like here we go on page 4. There is some bad dialogue at the top left. The gang leader, he's getting away in the armored car. The motor was left running. Spider-Man, I'll never reach him in time. Still, there's more than one way to skin a fur snatcher. He's like 10 feet away from the truck, but he says he can't catch him.
Right.
So, and again, ideally, all that information that the crowd gave would have been shown in the visuals, but whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a minor quibble. There's a few moments like that, but overall, I'm not going to complain. And I think that Bob Hull's art works with this style of writing. Like, it's very clear, straightforward storytelling, you know?
And I will say, too, I actually really enjoy this opening that we get.
Sure.
We get an introduction of Spider-Man, and we see kind of how he works and how he deals with everyday robbers and thieves. So it makes sense in the build-up to the wizard or speed demon has a good payoff. We see that what am I trying to say? It's no like big deal for him to stop somebody a cat burglar. So when he comes along, it really shows you how difficult and like how good this guy is.
Right.
And it really kind of makes him a good match for Spider-Man.
Yep. I agree.
And we don't have to like stop to explain who Spider-Man is again, like they do in a lot of comics where it's like a reintroduction over and over again. With this small little like subplot at the beginning, we kind of get everything we need to know. We get he's fast, he uses his webs, he uses his spider sense, like he kind of goes through the motions of who Spider-Man is, and then we jump right into Speed Demon after that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, again, when I was a kid, the first time I saw the spider sense, it didn't really have to be explained. You kind of just figured out as you go along, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, even for a kid, there's still a better way to tell the story. I think it's better to show, not tell, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's funny because then Peter, so he doesn't really take the threat seriously, and so he ends up going to, is this Bloomingdale's?
Yeah.
And then, of course, Speed Demon shows up. And then Spider-Man thinks, hot dog, I second-guessed him. He's here. So it's kind of funny because even though he knew he was coming, he didn't really take the warning seriously. So then Speed Demon starts ripping off this Bloomingdale's. And then Spider-Man goes into the change room, changes into Spider-Man, and comes out. But he does a good job, though. But it's one of those things where it seems like in a Denny O'Neil fight scene, and I don't want to just pick on Denny O'Neil, but it seemed like the fight scenes were kind of just going through the motions, whereas here, it seems like Bill Mantlo planned everything out, like each step. Okay, this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, you know?
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you can kind of see where they were thinking about, like, the kind of steps of what Peter Parker would also think of. Like, he thinks about, okay, he's running fast, so let's try to trip him up on the ground. And he puts oil on the ground and he makes it slippery. And then he's like, okay, well, he's kind of, they set up earlier that he can see extremely well too. And then he has like super sight as well. So Spider-Man blinds him by spraying perfume in his eyes. So then that's kind of like another thing. So he's kind of like the writers as Peter Parker were kind of going through the list of like, okay, what are the things I need to, do to defeat this guy? Like, what are his strengths? Okay, let's knock them out one by one. And then at the end, Peter Parker ends up defeating him. So they set it up at the beginning, and then at the end, Peter Parker has a way to, counter those abilities that he has. So it's really fun.
Right. And it's smart. Mm-hmm. So, so basically, yeah, so it's kind of going on. So he does eventually end up defeating him, but it takes a while.
Yeah.
But there's also the running subplot of Peter not having good photos of Speed Demon.
Right.
Which is kind of a running subplot in almost every Spider-Man story. But in at the end of the story, he ends up getting one. But of course, J. Jonah Jameson's not happy
Hates
because he makes Spider-Man look good, right?
Yeah, it's great.
So, yeah, it's a good little wrap-up, you know what I mean? And the thing is it's done in one, and so for a single-issue fill-in story, it's fine, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the ending doesn't seem as abrupt, too, because, one, it's not one panel at the end of the story.
Right,
It's a full page. Right. And on top of that, this kind of whole subplot was set up at the beginning with Peter Parker not having good pictures of the Speed Demon because he's moving so fast. So to have that be the ending, you already kind of got the first half of it earlier on. So we just kind of wrapped that up, which wraps up both stories at the same time, and it's a really satisfying ending, I thought.
Exactly. It's set up and payoff, right? So he solves the main plot and the subplot with one action, basically. It's great.
Yeah.
Right? Smart.
One last thing I noticed that I really liked about this issue, and it just kind of added to the attention of detail for me, was above the water cooler on the last page, you actually see a sign that's posted on the bulletin board that says "No dawdling."
Oh,
and
that's
it's
hilarious.
signed by J. Jonah Jameson.
That's freaking great.
Which is really great. And then if you notice in the picture that Peter Parker took of Spider-Man beating the speed demon, it says the ultimate jogger. So it looks like it's like a sign for...
Yeah, I never noticed that.
Yeah. So I just love the attention to detail in this issue. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it.
It could be because they're not the regular team. They were putting in extra effort. You know, like maybe Denny O'Neil was tired out by this point. I don't know.
Probably. And I mean, to be fair, though, it doesn't feel like Denny O'Neil was really in it to begin with.
Ever.
Yeah.
You're right. Okay. All right. So that brings us to Marvel Team Up number 111. And you can take it from here, Josh.
Yeah, this one was something, huh?
Yeah, it was a comic.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It was a comic. It's kind of a bummer too, because I feel like the premise is kind of cool, and if they would have used Spider-Man in the proper way, it would have fit fine.
Right.
But we have Spider-Man in this one teaming up with the Devil Slayer, which I'm not too familiar with.
No, I think I only remember, I think he had a really good entry in Marvel Universe, but that's about all I know about him.
Right. So I assume he's very similar to Doctor Strange, because he pretty much acts like Doctor Strange and kind of has that same master of the mystical arts feel to him.
I don't really know. I don't really know anything about him, to be honest.
Yeah. But we start off with with Spider-Man having a heart attack or something like that, or a blood vessel bursts in his brain and he dies, or so he thinks he does.
Yeah.
And he meets Uncle Ben, and this angel is talking to him, and it turns out that it's this lizard dude in disguise, and the Devil Slayer comes and saves him, and he explains that there's these ancient beings that are these lizard people, and they're looking to get this snake idol, and they need Spider-Man alive. He needs to be the one to go get it. They've captured all these other heroes, and they've tried, but they failed along the way, and they have them all captured. So Devil Slayer recruits Spider-Man to go steal this idol before they can, and then go and free all of the superheroes. And it turns out that the entire time, the Devil Slayer has also been a lizard person in disguise, and when they go to the hideout, Spider-Man frees all the other heroes, including the real Devil Slayer, and they all defeat the lizard people at the end of the day. And I don't know,
well, for starters, it's not, to me, really a Spider-Man story, right? Like,
no,
it feels like they could have just stuck any character in this story, it would have been almost exactly the same.
For sure. I mean, even if you look at the fact that they have the spider demon, like they're fighting a spider demon, and that's the excuse that they use, that they need Spider-Man. But they've tried to use all of these other superheroes before, and they failed. And the only thing that's needed from Spider-Man is to take this idol from this giant spider demon statue, and when he starts taking it, the statue starts moving and attacking him, and the Devil Slayer says, "Don't move, stay completely still, and then take it." And he does. He stays still, the statue stops moving, and he's able to take this idol away. There's nothing special about it.
Right.
That points to, like, we need Spider-Man to do this, or nobody else can. It's really weird that they chose to, like, specifically say we need Spider-Man to take this. Like, there's no reason. Anybody could have done it, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's possible this was just a Defender story that was laying around, and J.M. DeMatteis used it for Spider-Man, right?
For sure. I mean, like, does it have to do with the spider demon? Like, even the spider demon, there's no like consequences for it being specifically this spider demon. It could have been any demon. Right. And it would have worked. They could have had the Fist demon, and Iron Fist could have been the person to come. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. This entire thing is very confusing.
Right. And, like, for starters, I really hated that opening sequence with Uncle Ben. I really hated it.
It's always just weird when they kind of retread that Uncle Ben thing.
Right. It's just exploiting it. Right?
Yeah. And I think it's fine for Peter Parker to have those moments where he thinks about Uncle Ben and kind of has those, but like to bring him back, I guess this one's not too bad because it ends up being just to manipulate Spider-Man. It's not really him coming back, but
sure. But it's even, to be honest, it's even cheap the way they handle it, even in that respect, because at one point Spider-Man says, where is it here? Oh geez, I wish I could find it. But he basically says, I don't know if Uncle Ben is real or not, but right now I don't care. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't even have tried to tackle this subject if you weren't going to handle it properly.
It's on original page 4. He says, Mr. I don't know if that was Uncle Ben. And at the moment, I don't care. And he tackles the Devil Slayer.
Yeah.
But if you think I'm going to stand by and let you get away with cold-blooded murder.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, and then before you condemn me, Spider-Man, look at the being you've just slain, and of course it's a lizard man.
It was a lizard folk that could transform.
Right. It's just to me that was really lame. Just a waste.
And the thing is too. So how did they know that he was Peter Parker?
Exactly. See what I mean?
Like they explain that the Devil Slayer can know because he has the ability, like his cloak has the ability to read other people's minds and kind of get details. But then we learn it's not actually the Devil Slayer. It's just a lizard person, right?
Right.
So how did the lizard person do that?
Yep. It's just...
like, it doesn't really make sense.
I don't know. I'm not sure what they're thinking. And we should also point out the art is by Herb Trimpe, who we've talked a lot about the past few months. Mm-hmm. Again, it's serviceable art, but it kind of gives it that slightly, I don't know, like off quality to it. Like it doesn't quite feel like a Spider-Man comic.
I think that the art is really good when it's good, and then bad with it when it's bad. Like that's the best way I could put it. I think I've said this a couple of times already, but I think that the stuff that works really looks good, and then there's other things that feel really out of place and disproportionate and off.
Right, absolutely.
So he's very hit or miss, I find.
Right. I mean, there's one cool thing on page digital 16, original 15.
Okay.
Where they're kind of at the entrance to this. It's like a subway.
Right, like a sewer or something.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool shot of them kind of looking through and seeing the guys coming. That's kind of an interesting shot. I mean, there's no doubt that Herb Trimpe knows what he's doing. It's just that I think, like I've said before, he doesn't really go try to make it pretty. He's just telling the story. So it's like you said, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's just bad,
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then unfortunately it ends on a weird note of Spider-Man apparently being bit by one of the serpents, and then Doctor Strange informing him that he's going to die.
Right.
And then, spoiler alert, we know Spider-Man doesn't die ever, so it's kind of not much of a cliffhanger,
Right. And the thing is, I don't even remember him being bitten. Do you?
No. It's one of those... Again, J.M. DeMatteis, his stories are really dense, so sometimes I miss stuff and I have to go back and try and find it. No, and I couldn't really find when he was bit, so...
Okay. Yeah, I just thought that was really weird. I had to go back and kind of reread it and like try to skim through the panels to see if I had just missed it, but I still couldn't really find it, so I don't know. It's interesting, I guess. Like, if you're making the superhero kind of unkillable and unbeatable, and he's like always kind of coming up on top, it's interesting that it's not like a super villain that's going to just outright kill him and giving him like a blood disease. Like that's something, right? And then we have like time with him as he's going through this, and it's not just like a death.
Sure.
So it's kind of interesting, I guess. Like, it could be fun. So we'll see what they do with it. But if it's along the same veins of this comic, I don't think it's going to be as great as I'm hoping.
Well, also they're referencing King Call, which is a Robert E. Howard character, and I just don't think Spider-Man really suits a Conan the Barbarian-esque milieu, so
yeah,
I don't know. Again, sorry, go ahead.
Even for this too, like I think it could be really fun to kind of shove Spider-Man into a story he doesn't belong. Like having that fish out of water aspect where he is kind of jumping from like jumping through portals and time and going to different dimensions and these like weird places Spider-Man has never been. That can be really fun if you give him a reason to be there.
Sure, exactly.
Like if there was a specific reason they needed Spider-Man, like maybe they needed somebody with like quick reflexes to kind of Indiana Jones, like Raiders switch the idol for a bag of sand. They needed somebody fast to do that, or it was a long pit of lava or something he has to swing by. Like give me a reason that Spider-Man really needs to be there and they need his help. Or else it doesn't fit. Like he's just kind of along for the ride again, and the story just happens to him rather than him, having a purpose to be there.
Well, and I think this is kind of evidence of why they eventually canceled Marvel Team Up and replaced it with Web of Spider-Man, right? Because like the quality is too erratic, and it never fits with Amazing or Spectacular, right? They don't really touch on the subplots of like Deborah Whitman and his personal life as much in this series. So it was definitely the odd man out of the 3 monthly Spider-Man books at this time. So yeah, I mean, definitely not a bad issue, a fun issue, but it's definitely not something I would reread again.
No, I was just going to say that. I don't think I'm going to be revisiting this one anytime soon.
And not only would I not want to reread it, I would definitely not want to re-review it. Okay, so this brings us to Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 60, which is a very special issue for me, but I'm going to explain why later.
Okay.
First, we'll just talk about the story here. So this is a story by regular Spectacular writer Roger Stern, and drawn by Ed Hannigan and inked by Jim Mooney. Now, I want to point out that the way that the credits are done this issue, it's a little bit confusing. It's they list all 3 of those people, and then they just say storytellers. So that's kind of just their way of saying, they're all kind of working as a team,
together.
Right? Yeah. But are you familiar with Ed Hannigan?
No, not very familiar. No.
I don't know much about him, but he was I always thought he was a decent artist. He drew the first arc of Legends of the Dark Knight in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what I know him from, and a couple of really good Spider-Man covers. But then apparently I think he was the art director of DC. I should probably have researched this, but he was the art director of DC or Marvel. I'm going to look it up as we're talking, but he's one of those guys that he was never really popular, like a superstar. But now that I know that he had such a sort of a lofty position, it makes perfect sense because his art is always solid.
Right.
It's always good, So just really quickly, I'll just say that apparently he co-created Cloak and Dagger with Bill Mantlo.
Oh, okay, cool.
Among other things. He also did the Batman covers from 83 to 85, and he helped launch the Green Arrow. So, yeah, he's definitely a solid artist. Yeah. This art was fine. I thought it was good. Basically, this is following up the continuing story of the Beetle and, what's his name? The Gibbon. And I thought it was, just as good as the previous issues. I liked following along with the Beetle.
Yeah. I think this was better than the previous issue, personally.
Yeah, the last issue was kind of a fill-in.
Yeah, it was really just kind of a repeat of everything that happened 2 issues ago.
Right.
We were kind of promised this payoff of the Beetle in last issue. We never got it. We pretty much, went through the comic without him and then got the same cliffhanger at the end that the Beetle's going to be the next issue. Right. But yeah, this feels like a nice conclusion to this story.
Right.
And I think this might be like the most Peter Parker Spider-Man has ever been in the comics we've been reading.
Yeah, you could say that.
I really, they really kind of hammered down his, the fact that he's like an everyday person and he always, like, nothing ever goes perfect for him. Like, if one thing goes right, another goes wrong.
Yeah.
It's constant throughout this comic, or this issue, I feel.
Well, they follow up with the ongoing Deborah Whitman subplot.
Right.
So he runs into her and things seem to be going well. So she invites him over for dinner, but then he shows up and her new boyfriend's there.
Right.
What is it? Biff Rifkin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I always think of Biff Tannen.
Yeah, of course. So then he's watching TV, and then of course, he's got to go because he's got to, fulfill his Spider-Man duties, right?
Yeah.
So he's got to ditch Deborah again.
And you know what, though? I think that this is the proper way to do it.
Right. He's not an asshole. Right.
Exactly. He's not a jerk to Deb. He just has to do it. Like he's kind of backed into a corner. It's not, oh, your uncle's in trouble. I really don't have time for that shit, Deb. Honestly, you know what I mean? Like, in ditching her, like, he's just a jerk most of the time. Where this is like he's, his hands are kind of tied. Like he's got to go, defeat Beetle, or else people will get hurt.
Right.
So he's forced to do that. And then, even before that, he's like. He has this battle with Beetle, and he kind of loses. He doesn't really lose, but he kind of has to like get away so he could figure out how the Beetle works and figure out how to defeat him. So he drops into the sewer. Right. And when he comes back out, he says something like, "Can this get any worse?" And he lifts the manhole cover up. I
love that.
And a car drives over. It's so great. And gets squish and like sent right back down into the sewer. It's fantastic.
Right.
And then we see him like having to take a shower and clean his Spider-Man suit from like the stinky sewer water, and like I think it's so well put together.
Right. And also he has to do this at Empire State University. Right. And then there's this guy, what's his name, the coach or whatever.
Right.
Who's kind of like banging on the door, and then they kind of have a little argument. So yeah, like we get some good Peter Parker stuff in this issue.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And then jumping back to the second fight, it's a little bit silly that the Beetle has tied up the Gibbon on this big X on the roof.
Yeah.
But I do like the fact that the Gibbon is still played off as like he doesn't really want to be there. He doesn't really want to do this. So he's kind of like a three-dimensional character, right? He's not just a generic supervillain. So I like that.
And he's not even really a supervillain, I guess.
No, he's not. No.
He was just doing this so he could get some footage for his camera crew. Like he wasn't really trying to defeat Spider-Man or, start a real fight. He just kind of wanted like some footage, and he kind of gets thrown into this whole mess.
Right.
So yeah, I thought that was fun too. Like I was kind of expecting not to enjoy him.
Sure.
In this issue, but I think that it ended up working pretty well.
Yeah, and once again, Spider-Man wins, but of course the crowd turns against him, so we can never have a clean victory for Spider-Man, right?
Right, so. Yeah, the camera crews are there, but there's interference from the Beatles' antennas.
Right.
So they hear
another
the
cool
audio.
Yep.
Right, they hear the audio, but they don't have any live footage. So it's broadcasting to everybody this fight, and nobody can see what's going on. And then when it finally, the footage goes back to like a live broadcast, we see that the Gibbon lands the final blow. So everybody thinks that he's the hero, and Spider-Man kind of runs away. So at the end, Spider-Man's not a hero again, which again leads to Peter Parker kind of winning at the end of the day, but also losing at the same time.
Exactly.
So yeah, I thought this was a really fun issue. Art was really good. I would definitely recommend it.
I don't know what form you read it in, but did you also read the backup story?
I didn't read it fully because I like kind of skimmed through it and saw that it was just retelling Peter Parker's origin. So I kind of just skimmed it. I didn't read it. Was there something special about it?
Oh, very special for me personally.
Oh, really?
Because this is what happened, okay? I was going to skip it too, but I'm like, you know what? Whatever. This is Roger Stern. I'm going to read this sucker, okay?
Okay.
So I started to read it, and then I've read Amazing Fantasy 15 so many times that I started to kind of skim read, okay? Mm-hmm. And there's a couple things they added in that were okay, but overall, the original is always better, right?
Yeah.
So I'm skimming through, and lo and behold, I get to the last page, okay?
Okay.
And guess what, Josh? Do you remember one of the submissions of doing this podcast? What my submission was?
To finish all of your comics that you've been.
Yeah, there's that.
Oh,
but there's also the Holy Grail. Do you remember the Holy Grail?
No.
The Holy Grail is a panel of Spider-Man that I remember seeing as a kid that in a comic I once owned, but I sold. And I have been searching for it for 40 years. Actually, not 40 years, maybe 35 years. Okay. The last panel of this comic is it. Peter Parker is standing on the docks, and Spider-Man, the outline of Spider-Man is looking up into the sky in anguish. This is the comic. So this solves the mystery. This is the third Spider-Man comic that I had when I was a little kid, and sure enough, it came out between the first and the third. So I definitely bought it, in the same timeline that I bought those other ones, but for some reason, somewhere along the way as a kid, I sold it.
Wow.
And so when I first got Marvel Unlimited, I remember going through the last page of 100 issues of Spider-Man, just trying to figure out what this comic was, because I knew it was the last panel.
Wow.
But maybe I came across this issue, but when I saw that it was a redux of Amazing Fantasy 15,
you just kind of skipped it.
Yeah, because I thought, I know that ends. It can't be. So sure enough, here it is. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool panel too.
Yeah, it is cool. Yeah,
it's simple, but it definitely gets the message across. It's really cool.
I'll tell you this: my brain was so undeveloped. I was probably 5 years old that my brain didn't understand symbolism. So I thought why is Spider-Man also in the sky? Oh, I see. So this helped teach my brain to understand symbols and abstract ideas and stuff like that. So. Thank you, Roger Stern and Greg LaRocque, right?
Dang, that's awesome.
So, yep. So, yeah, this is the other Holy Grail was, what was it called? Atlantis Chronicles by Peter David, okay? I had bought random issues when I was a kid, and then I could never find number 7 of Atlantis Chronicles, okay?
Okay.
It took me 22 years to finally find it, okay?
Wow.
And then it was one of those ones where as soon as I found it, I found 10 more at every convention I went to, of course. And then within a year, they reprinted the thing in hardcover. And so now anyone can get it. But
right.
It was a fun little quest, a little side quest. But anyway. So anyway, yeah, obviously I recommend this issue.
Yeah.
It was not only do you get a good Spider-Man story, you get, if you want a redux of the origin, they've also got that too. Although the original, like we said, is better.
Yeah, for sure.
We didn't mention the cover. What do you think of this cover by Frank Miller?
It's okay. I mean,
yeah, I like it. I actually really like it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I think that I'm just not a big fan of the shading.
Sure.
I think that I personally like line work, and it's really kind of missing here, and you're kind of shown like the shape of Spider-Man through the lighting.
Sure.
But the shadows are kind of broken up and shaded a little weird. I don't know. I don't hate it, but I think that it's just not my favorite.
For me, I'm a Frank Miller fan, but I'm not as big a Frank Miller fan as other people, and I actually think this works better for him because his anatomy is never perfect.
Right.
So it's almost like he's hiding his lack of technical skill with his excelling in abstract, shadows and shapes and design and stuff like that. So that's why I like it. But I think it works as a cover too. Not all of his Spider-Man covers have worked for me, but this one does. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
I think maybe I would have liked it a little bit more too. Maybe if the background was more simple, because it's also shaded the same way, where it's kind of like this like pointillism almost, and it also has a lot of detail. So maybe it's just like the fact that it's like detailed Spider-Man on top of detailed background.
Okay.
I don't know, but again, I didn't hate it, but it's also not my favorite. I really enjoyed the Amazing Spider-Man cover.
Yes, that was actually pretty good. You're right.
I also really like the fact that like even the title is being sucked up by the tornado.
Yes.
As he's, spinning around. The comics code is tilted. The box on the left is all like messed up. The letters are all askew. Like I thought it was really cool.
It's funny. I didn't even look, but do you know who drew this cover?
No.
Walt Simonson.
Oh, that's really cool.
Are you familiar with Walt Simonson?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like in these days when he was on Thor and X Factor, I love Walt Simonson. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, it's a good cover. You're right. The Marvel Team Up cover, not so good.
No. It's a lot.
We didn't even mention the Marvel Team Up was drawn
Walt
by
Simonson
Herb
also
Trimpe.
did covers for Star Wars, right?
He did interiors as well.
Interiors? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't. For some reason, I remember Walt Simonson specifically for the Star Wars covers, because I thought that there were some really good ones. There's just one with Darth Vader, and he's got his arms out that I always remember. The Falcon is like flying.
Really, I don't remember that one.
Right towards the the reader, and Darth Vader's got his arms out, and he's like using the Force. It's I don't know why that one sticks out to me, but that's what I remember Walt Simonson for.
Yeah, no, he's a great artist.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that wraps up this episode of Here Comes the Spider-Cast. We had a pretty good month. I would say 2 out of 3 this month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe 2.5, or maybe 1.5.
Which is pretty good in this era, I find.
Yeah,
to have 2 of 3 being recommended issues.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's going to get better. Next month is another special one for me because Amazing Spider-Man 223 is the 3rd Spider-Man comic I ever bought. Yes. So I've read this one a million times as well, so I have a lot to say about that. Then for some reason, I skipped like several years before I got another Spider-Man comic. I'm not sure why, but we'll talk about that next time.
Okay.
But yeah, so that wraps up this episode.
Yeah, you can check us over at the Comic Book Syndicate on Facebook and at Comic Syndicate on Twitter. Send us a like and comment on our posts about our videos and our podcast. We'd love to hear what you guys think about the episodes and also the issues we're talking about. We want to hear some feedback from you guys, so that's definitely always welcome.
That's right. So until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spider-Cast.
All right, see you then.